What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have a fellow offensive lineman, one of the best to ever do it from the Peninsula District, also one of the best from UVA, my brother from Newport News, the Menchville offensive line and UVA great Robert Hunt is in the building today, man. How you doing, Rob?
Dwight, man, I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, man, you on my list, man, and I'm glad we can connect. You look good, man, in that Vicktory Life stuff, man. I know.
Man, I appreciate that.
You look good, man, but I definitely want to get you on. Anybody that follows me on Twitter and Facebook or Instagram knows I love reflecting on the greats. I love talking to people here in their legacy spotlights. I love talking to people like yourself because, you know, you and I came out. I've said this to so many guests I've had on, from Marseille Brown to Sherwood and Stan Jones. You are, along with myself and Elton Brown and so many great players, part of the Peninsula District golden era. I feel like the golden era was from, you know, the late 80s up to the early 2000s when it came to not just the Peninsula, but the Tidewater and Virginia high school sports. You just, especially our area, just so many great matchups and great games. And you were a great player. And we'll talk about our matchups a little later.
Yeah.
But I want to talk more about just where it all started, man. You know, I remember we were in college, you were at UVA and I was at Tech. I came home and you had a big cookout and everybody from UVA and Tech and Newport News. It was like a block party. And I met your dad. I talked to him before, but I met him. And, you know, I recognize the fact that you come from a good home. And I want to talk about your childhood. I want to talk about, let's take it back to when you were growing up, man, and, you know, the foundation of Robert Hunt, man. Just talk about your family and your sisters and just what it was like growing up, man.
Well, man, I consider myself to be 100% Newport News. Funny part about it is I was actually born in Hampton General, and but been in Newport News my whole life. You know, it's popular now. Everybody that's not from the area says, you know, I'm from bad news. But for me, I consider that to be disrespectful if I claim bad news, because to me, that's a certain part of the city. And for me to say I'm from there, people who know me, that know, you know, Robert Hunt, they know I'm not from there. And from, you know, I'm from Denby. I'm from a certain part of Denby, uptown. And that was a whole part of the culture for the longest time. But I'm outside of the area 757, I'm 100% Newport News, 100% VA if you're traveling outside of the state. And I'm a protector of that. Blessed. My mom is from Smithfield, and huge part of my story. And then my dad, he's originally from Danville, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But he grew up in Lee Hall of Newport News and grew up on Tallafair Road, which is like the last street in Newport News in the western part, because it's east and west in the western part of the city. Up by Yorktown Naval Weapons, because his family was from the area they call a colony, from Lackey in York County, which was right through the woods from Tallafair Road. So all of that blended together. So I'm just as much that part of Newport News as I am, you know, the whole city. And with my parents being older than a lot of my peers' parents, they were here in the city when it was Newport News stopped at 39th Street, basically at their apprentice school. And from 39th Street all the way to Fort Eustis Lee Hall was Ward County. And those are the people that went, you know, to Carver. From Newsom Park all the way to Lee Hall, all of those people went to Carver High School. And my dad played there. And our stories are similar now that I look back on it and reflect back. You know, basically how it kind of started for me. You know, they reflect each other. He was from that area of the city. They rode the bus down to Carver. So you're talking about going from Fort Eustis all the way basically to Mercury Boulevard to high school. And then you had people that came from Newsom Park, 39th Street, that came up to Carver. And then everybody below 39th all went to Huntington, the powerful Huntington. My dad, he split time between Danville and Newport News. But when he tells a story when he was about 15, it was the last time he worked the farm because they would come to Newport News, put the names on the books, then go back, work the farm, and then they wouldn't report back until like late September, October. And they had a pass pretty much, to start school. But then he said, man, I'm never going back to the farm after that. And that's when he built the relationship with the people going to Carver and played football at Carver for Coach Lovett, Doc Lovett. Yep. And that is basically how my relationship with the coaches I've had over the years grew, and bonded. He spent time with Coach Lovett. Coach Lovett mentored him. My dad had a gruesome injury in his like 9th or 10th grade year. Broke his leg, spent a year in a body cast. And then it was after that, then he started playing. And my dad never really talked about much about if he was a good player, if he could play or whatever. I learned more after his death and other people telling me stories about, what he did as a player and stuff like that. A friend of mine had an article. She was telling me about her dad graduated in 1960 from Phoenix High School. And she said, my dad played a little football and he had passed also. So she had like some articles from the newspaper, and she showed me the articles, and I was reading the article and I was like, wait a minute. And I looked at it again, and her dad and my dad had made, which is equivalent to like All-State, District and All-State in the black leagues. And they would have played, if they had the All-Star team to play, they would have played side by side. Her dad playing D tackle, my dad playing DN. And I was like, dang, my dad actually, was good. But he never talked about it. And that's what was crazy. My dad, people would assume that your folks were the folks that pushed you, that drove you, that would train you and stuff like you see a lot now. My dad wasn't like that. My dad was more about, he understood I can only get you so far based on the experience I had, but these coaches out here are the ones that you got to be able to listen to, do what they tell you, and go from there.
Yeah. First of all, shout out to your dad and the Huntington and Carver teams. My dad knows your dad. God rest your dad's soul. But at the same time, the legacy of Huntington and Carver always needs to be told. The older I get, the more I realize from talking to my father, those Huntington and Carver teams back in the day were elite. They were special. You talking about full of loaded with talent that went for years until they started integrating the schools. Rob, I do want to ask you this though, man. You talked about how your father allowed you to be coached by the coaches. And he never bragged about him being an athlete, but you do have other people in your family who are athletes, and it's not like Rob was the only one that shined. Just talk about some of your other family members, because that's something I've learned about you over time, that you're not just you. You were the one that was highly touted and recognized, but there are other people in your family that play sports.
Yeah, so one of my biggest role models and mentors, I mean, to the point, so you'll understand this. For the Black community in this area, everybody knew each other because it wasn't a lot, it wasn't a lot that people did. You either were in education, military, or you worked at the shipyard. And my mom, she, went to Hampton. She and my parents did an awesome job of picking my godparents, my sister's godparents, and then people we interacted with on a daily basis. And it really, the community raised us. But my god brother is Alonzo Bell Jr. And he played at Denby High School. He was like number 3 in his class at Denby. He goes to Princeton and he goes and plays football there. And it's always been understood that if you have access and can get in somewhere, that's where you're going. It's not, oh, I want to go here because that's where everybody's going. They were like, nah, you're talking old school. My mom's 81. So I'm talking about old school, Black people was like, oh, they letting you in there? Nah, you going, this is where you going. So he goes to Princeton. He's playing. he wore number 60 when he was at Princeton. And so I followed him. I mean, he was so much an influence on my life. When I was in 3rd grade, I took him to school when he was home from college for show and tell. Wow. And, you know, yeah, and like, you know, this is, you know, this is my cousin. He's a college football player. He's not only college football player, he plays at Princeton. And, you know, this is what's going on. And then he gets an opportunity to play and try out for the Cowboys back in the day when Too Tall Jones was there. And I think White, the D lineman White was there. And he was an offensive lineman. So then I started paying attention more to offensive linemen there. And then, like for so many families, my dad's side, so my family name on my dad's side is Overby. Okay. My dad and his youngest brother, so my dad's oldest brother is an Overby. Then my grandmother had my dad and my dad's younger brother. They're both Hunts. And then my grandfather that I know raised my dad and my youngest uncle, they're all Edmonds. So that's where the draw is to the Edmonds that played at Tech. Their father, who was a mentor of mine, because my mom, because she was involved in the school system and education, got him to come and visit after he got drafted. He would come and speak to the high schools and everything, the local high schools, about his experiences. And he played at Maryland. Was fortunate enough to watch him go through the draft process, and was at his house on draft day. And you know, he was one of 9, big family. So that's where that, you know, connection comes in. So watching them, and he was having success in the NFL right when we were finishing up high school. So having those two, you know, people as resources, because they're going through it, and my parents made sure I spent time with them, spent time around them, could ask them questions, and still to this day, you know, talk to both of them, reach out. Something comes up, needs something, they're there for me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, what a blessing, man. And that's really good. That's why I wanted to highlight that, because I remember several years ago, I was on Facebook and we were having our annual UVA talk. And then you were like, I got family from Tech. And I was like, what? And then you broke it down, but you didn't go into depth like right now. And I was like, wow, such a small world, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy. I do want to touch, you know, because our area is unique in the fact that obviously there's a lot of tradition and pageantry and great athletes that start off not just in football and basketball, but track, baseball. Many of us play multiple sports. But obviously, when it comes to sports, it's the youth league that's the foundation. Yeah. Before you get to high school, and if you're blessed to go to college, it's the youth league. Now, I started off in Newport News. My mom and dad, we were on the East End, and then we moved from Stewart Gardens to Hampton, Shell Road. So I played in Aberdeen, and I played, you know, for them. And, you know, you on the other side of town. Did you do any youth leagues? What youth league were you in?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about that, because I love it. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It was year round. So I don't know when you grew into your size, but I was maybe like 4 or 5. We go to the doctor, and my mom was like, the doctor told my mom and dad, look, you got to get him doing something. And my dad, you know, my mom said, man, your dad was so excited when the doctor said that, because now we going to Little League. So I guess I was about 4. They started taking me to like Sanford Eagles and Denby. They had those things called like Denby Day, where you had the parade, and then after the parade, they would have like 4 or 5 youth games at Denby Elementary. Well, again, some friends of the family, they had a son that was a little bit older that had started playing. So we started going out to those games. And that was my first introduction, you know, to going to Little League games. And back then, that's when you had like TTP, you had Parkview, you had Hydenwood, you had Sanford Eagles, you had Sanford Eagles, you had Denby, and then you also had, we scrimmaged against, we didn't play, you had Fort Eustis had their own team also. And then
Fort Eustis had a team.
Yeah, Fort Eustis had a team. And
It's
then you
crazy.
had I remember they had Hampton Tornadoes.
Yeah,
They had
Hampton
Wise
Tornadoes.
Thomas.
Yep.
They had Wise
Hmm.
Thomas and Fox Hill Redskins.
Yeah.
I think it was. So right when I came in, we were Sanford Eagles. But then as more people started moving to Denby, the Parks and Rec started changing up some. Oh, they had Deer Park also. They started changing some of the teams and merging. So Hydenwood and Sanford Eagles combined and made OP. You had they started the boys club, but they also had World War II, and
Oh,
people
two.
know World War II, and I'm telling you right now, old school people know this. You got Doris Miller, but
I know Doris Miller. Yeah, I didn't know about no
War,
World War
War,
II.
World War II was Doris Miller before Doris Miller came. So everybody, man, I played Doris. Nah, World War II. Everybody tell you it was World War II. It was Parkview, and I don't care where you were in the city. They were the big bad machine. They were like Hampton was, Hampton High School was to the PD. World War II. Just the name alone, and they had legends that played there. But they made them, for some reason, they changed the name. They had them change the name from World War II. They changed it to Doris Miller. Parkview folded, and then when Parkview folded, those guys spread, and some came to Oyster Point, some went to Deer Park. Used to be called Ward. People started playing Ward, and that was like the center of the city. That was old, like North Newport News.
Yeah.
They called it, from Mercury Boulevard to J. Clyde. They switched from Parkview, became Ward. And so a lot of those, people started moving. People moved from the East End, moved to Denby. My folks, as a matter of fact, before I was born, they lived on Suburban Parkway, right there by Hampton, the Deaf and Blind School. Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
they lived there, and then they moved to Denby. And back to what you were saying about Little League, my mom was in the store in Denby, and she turned the corner, and one of her students was there, and her student was Magdalene Macklin. So that's Paul and David's mom. Paul and David's
Yeah.
mom. My mom taught both of his parents, and so she was like, my mom was like, "Oh, you pregnant?" She said, and that time she was pregnant with David, and she said, "Yeah, we live on Colony Road." And my mom was like, "Colony Road? We live on Belgrade, which was right around the corner."
Mm-hmm.
So little we were both littles, but little Paul, he was getting ready to start playing at Sanford. I was getting ready to play, so he was like my first running back was P Mac, and P Mac to the Paul Macklin is like my brother. We grew up together. We always joke, and I was like, P Mac, I knew you before you knew knew you because my mom taught both your parents.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so we grew up around the corner from each other. In that neighborhood, we had Charles Riemann. On my street, 2 doors down on Belgrade was Karen Barefoot, the women's basketball coach, basketball player, legend. She lives on the street. Eric Mays, who coached for a long time at Menchville, Woodside, was assistant at CNU for a while. Grew up right there in Lansdowne, which is it was new at the time.
Yeah.
Right around the corner from Sanford. So we weren't far from where we practiced around there. And me, P Mac, and then David later, we were kind of like, we call them like driveway kids, where all of the older kids that we wanted to be like, they were, we had a skating ring that was really big back then, and like the older kids would go to. But me, Paul, we had to stay in the driveway. We watched, and they had this group. They had this group called a Beat Patrol. Man, they dressed like the Guardian Angels, but they were break dancers, and they would be on Friday and Saturday night. They would be walking by to go to Plaza, and we couldn't ever go, but we was just like, man, we the Junior Beat Patrol, man. We gonna be down with them dudes or whatever. And I still see these guys, and I tell them all the time. But I think they knew that that wasn't us. And with Coach Macklin, and like you said, and literally growing up, we had everything that we eventually got to when we got to the college and pros. We had our own personal trainer, Coach Macklin. He was coaching, young and coaching, but he practiced with us. He had us doing summer track. He had us, running, exercising, stretching, doing all that stuff. But obviously, Paul and David were better than me. I was the best. We was kids, but they kept us busy.
Yeah.
My dad coached football. Coach Macklin coached basketball when he wasn't, coaching at the high school. He coached rec league basketball. We had at Orchard Point, we had our own chaplain because B2 or Marcellus Harris, B2 Harris,
he's been on here.
Yeah, his dad was the chaplain for for us. We had all of that aspect in Little League. We traveled and they made it happen for us. And like, because I remember when Coach Mack, or we call him Daddy Mack, when he would have us on Saturdays. So if my dad didn't have us, he would have us. And I remember going down 17 when he was coaching at York High School, and we would have to pick up cans on 17. And then we would go, be the ball boys for practice. We would go to HU every Saturday, the games. They kept us involved around sports. We saw, we went to all the games. Whether you had a ticket or not, you had to be in that number. You had to be there. And that's what that's how we grew up. I mean, we pushing cars. We found out later it was because the car ran out of gas, but we thought we was training, and we joke about that. He had us in summer track, but I mean, just stories like that, man, that we trip off of.
Nah, man. From a shout out to B2, man. He was been on here, man, and I was a big fan of his high school and college. Obviously, everybody you named, the Macklins, legendary players and people. And the one thing I've noticed, even when I've had the Bacos on here, Marseille Brown, and so many people, the females, even the non-athletes, the sense of community and pride, but most importantly, the parental involvement and the fact that you guys had a village. And that's what I think, not to get off subject here with your legacy spotlight, but just hearing you say, I'm getting chills, I get excited because you're taking me back. I'm a visionary and I'm a visual person to that time. And I remember growing up and feeling like, safe, but also feeling like motivated because of the people and my friends and my crew around each other, us, and, the people that were ahead of us that we saw, we wanted to emulate and be like. And you had that same sense of community and pride with the coaches and father figures around you and Macklin and, B2's dad is a great man. And, I'm glad that you guys had that. Let me ask you this, Rob. When you were growing up, again, I moved from Newport News, my family, and we moved from Newport News to Hampton, but obviously you mentioned my school, Hampton High. I just posted on Facebook yesterday, Eric Hunter. And yeah, I know, right? But in the PD, in the Peninsula District, and even in my area, especially being in Hampton, we know me and Walt Ford, everybody growing up on Greenbrier, Shell Road, Vaughn Avenue, King Street, we wanted to be part of that. We grew up going, Aberdeen, you play your rec league games, and then you got dressed or changed, or sometimes you just wore your pads and your jersey to the stadium and watch the high school guys get down.
Yeah.
We wanted to be part of that. Which was it? Menchville for you? Was it Denby? Was there a school? Was it Ferguson? Did you look? You know what? One day I'm going to go to Menchville and I'm going to do my thing. Which school was that for you, or
man,
you just in the moment?
It was 1,000% Menchville, and people would say that's crazy, but I told you before I lived on Belgrade. When I moved to where I live now, I could walk from my old house to my new house. So I never switched schools. I live a mile away from Menchville, right there. And I grew up around that school. And Menchville was unique because it drew from downtown and it drew from Denby. So, and it used to be a thing there that if you were good at sports at Menchville, you had to be from downtown. It was just, that was what was understood. If you were good, you were from downtown. And I literally walked to practice, walked to school, then later rode my bike. I was a neighborhood kid. I did everything around there. I would go watch practice. And we when I was little, we used to go there because it was close. We'd go see Pope play basketball when they had, Troy Wright, Harvell there, Whitehead, when they were playing basketball, we there. because for my dad and for a lot of people in Newport News in the community, you went to work shipyard, you got off, you had to get home, get turned around by 5 o'clock to get to wherever the big game was that night, or you won't get in. Like, if it was game was down Hampton, we going to Hampton, be ready, make sure you're ready. We going there, you traveling around going to it. But I mean, I was so much Menchville that I tried to sneak on the football team when I was in 7th grade, because I had to stop playing Little League when I was like 10, because I got too big. And they came to me and said, look, you can play, but you're going to have to play with the 14-year-olds on A-League. I'm 10. My dad was like, nah, you're going to sit out. And then you play sports year round. So then I started playing baseball and basketball to keep me busy. And then I was the manager for probably one of the greatest Little League teams ever. You had three like All-American, All-Conference, D1 conference players on my dad's Little League team. It was B2, Chris Morant, David Macklin. That was my dad's backfield in Little League. And then you had the other guys that were tough players. And we traveling around. We going to Richmond to play, stuff like that. But the 7th grade, I tried to sneak on, and that's when, if things had played out differently, Menchville probably would have been dominant, because if you looked around the PD at the time, all of the stars at the other high schools, both Newport News and Hampton, all started at Menchville that year. Jokers won't want to admit it, but that's where they started, and we'll get into that. I'll break you down.
No. We can get into it now. That's why I like these legacy spots. That's a little nugget. I will say that before you answer this question, I'm not dismissing this, because Hampton and Newport News are so intertwined.
Yes.
And look, we men now. Sean Hamlet is not a Hampton guy. You know what I'm saying? Neither is Ahmad Hawkins. They came from Newport News. But go ahead and just tell everybody watching.
I'm glad you started with that. So my 7th grade year, I go and try to sneak on at Menchville to play JV. Some of the guys didn't know me because I hadn't gotten there yet, as far, but I was around. But some of the guys that had started going out, I knew from Little League, and we were around the same age, so they thought I could be there, but weren't really sure. So on that JV team, you had Antonio Banks, Sean Hamlet, you had the Silver Twins, Kevin and Calvin, you had Charles Nichols, you had Brent Hayes. So you had these guys there that, and I think that was the year. I think you had Lasseter, Kwame, and them. They were all seniors. My sister was a senior that year, so she was up at the school, but she was like on the other side of the building. And I knew that if I got home by 4 o'clock, I was good. 4:30. That's when you did 2-a-days. You got there in the morning, you ate lunch there, you had your second practice, get home. Because my dad's whole rule was, when I got home from the shipyard, you had to be home. So I had timed it out that I could go to practice and be back at the crib and nobody would know the difference. Give out helmets, I get my helmet. I don't know who it was out of those guys on the team went and snitched to the coach, to the JV coach. Now, here's the catch. Guess who the JV coach was? Tommy Reeman.
Coach Reeman.
Coach Reeman was at Menchville. He was the JV coach. So they went and they told Coach, hey man, he only in 7th grade, coach. And so he comes to me and he was like, young man, Coach Reeman, he had this slow, he was like John Wayne. He was like a black John Wayne.
No, I know.
Yeah. So he pulled me aside and he was like, what's your name? And I always told everybody my whole name. As far as I know, I ain't never have a nickname. it was always Robert Hunt. Anybody, Newport News, whatever, they knew me by my whole name. And so I told him my name, and he was like, wait a minute. And he was like, nah, son, nah. Give me my helmet back. You got to go. Because he knew my mom and he knew my dad.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that crushed my dream. And then the next year, when I get ready to come to 8th grade, he leaves, goes to Manor, takes Fred, takes Fred Lassiter with him. They go to Manor. Sean, which is another crazy part, Sean's mom and my mom worked together for years. And I used to go to my mom's office and probably wear the mess out of Miss Hamlet back there at work, running around the building and stuff. Because they had an office that was away from central administration.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean leaves, goes to Hampton.
Yes, he does.
So now it's just Banks is still there. Antonio's still there. So that next year I come on to the team, Banks is there, I'm playing JV. Those guys are up and down. We go into, I think it was my 9th grade year, maybe it's the 8th or 9th grade year, Banks gets hurt. And we had the new head coach came in with us. And he was like, hey, he can't play with us. And we was like, what? And Banks, he wanted to be at Menchville, but Jake turned him in as living outside of the zone because he lived in Newsom Park.
He sure did.
Yeah, he lived in Newsom Park, and he could catch the bus like at Tisdale Lane near Booker T and come up to Menchville. He was doing that. But when he got hurt, they were like, nah, he going back because Jake came from Ward. Jake was cool with Coach Lyon. So Banks goes back. We was like, man, what are you doing, man? How are we losing Banks, man? Because I've known Banks since Little League. So my dad used to pull up. He had a little brown Chevy truck, a little small like S10, manual steering. Practice. He would pull up at Heritage. Boom, Morant, Tracy Lewis to play that war. He was one of my first quarterbacks. Banks, everybody from Heritage. Boom. Heritage Apartments would jump in the back of the pickup truck. Boom, we going to practice. After practice, pull up. Boom, drop out. Everybody. So I knew Banks since Little League, and that's how we've been connected. But he up and goes to Ward, and then that was the rest of history. So guys was moving. If somebody didn't like somebody how they were done in the past, they up and moving.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Banks has been on here too, and of course, Banks is like my big brother, man. We were at Tech together. We had some battles too, Hampton and Warwick. He's a few years older than me, but I love that dude. And I'm glad you mentioned him, because he's one of the greats. I mean, on all levels. I mean, he's one of the greats. But on top of it, it goes to show you the fine line. And just a little nugget you never knew, as long as we rock with each other. I almost became your teammate. Going into my 9th grade year, my dad, we were living on Shell Road. Shell Road's okay, but it was getting hot, and we were looking to, move. And we moved. We were looking at a house in Newport News, because Hampton. You mentioned the deaf and blind school. That part of Hampton we lived on. You go up 2 stoplights, you're in Newport News.
Yeah.
By the laundromat and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, we went over there going towards the waterfront. And it was a real nice single family home. And we were getting ready to buy it. And my dad said, hold on, man, what zone is this school zone for? And the guy said, I believe Menchville. And he talked and he was like, yeah, Menchville. My dad was like, and I was, at that time, I was going into 9th grade year. He knew how bad I wanted to play at Hampton, but it wasn't like I knew anything. I wasn't on a team yet. And I almost became your teammate. That would have been fun. But we stuck with Hampton, man. Let's talk about that time because, Menchville, we'll get to your senior year when you got the best of us. but before we talk about that, I want you just to talk about Menchville because you took pride. You wanted to go there. And you talk about the players that left and came and gone and the coaches that influenced you. But on top of it, I want you to touch on, Rob, just, being at Menchville and how you got on varsity, and then just the success and the battles you guys had and the games you remember, because it's the golden era. You're talking
Yeah.
about Kickerton had Morocco and Chip Laws. Ferguson
Yeah.
had Aaron Brooks and
Yeah.
Antoine Smith, Alonzo Darden, and all those guys, man. And Riemann, they were running the spread. They called the run and shoot back then.
Yeah.
You know, Warwick was deep. Warwick was loaded. Bethel, of course, we already know about Chuck, you know, AI and Barry Hargraves and Jonathan Dean. Friday Night Lights in the PD.
Yeah,
And
it was serious.
sometimes Saturday afternoons when Hampton and Newport News had to move the game to Saturday.
Yeah,
the battles were legendary, right?
Yeah.
You and I were a part of that. You're talking about historical moments. But that's my recollection. Was yours the same?
Man, definitely the same. I've gone back and tried to break down every high school of what I thought they had and what they were known for. Everybody knows Hampton. Hampton was the machine. You know, if you wanted to win the championship, you went and signed up, whether you played or not. You had your players, but you basically got the cream of the crop as far as anybody, you know, even y'all had some hangers-ons, but then you had your ballers. So Hampton was, you know, had the reputation and stuff like that. They had the history. Then, you know, Phoebus. I tell everybody, Phoebus around 500, but I'm telling you, back then, Phoebus would bust you up. Phoebus was physical. And it was the same, it was the same cat that played like at Wise Thomas. And Wise Thomas always looked old to me. When we played them Little League, them same dudes would be at Phoebus. And like they got the flashy uniforms now with the gold. I remember Phoebus would show up. They looked like they had practice uniforms on.
Yes.
And they will bust you up. May not win the game, but you had to be on your guard when you went to play Phoebus. Kickerton, they had athletes and had teams, but they were similar kind of to Menchville. Menchville and Bethel were kind of the same. I think the name and notoriety athletes went to Bethel. I mean, they always had the big name legends that went to Bethel over the years. You had inconveniences. You know, you had like Chuck when he was there playing. You know, Chris Gaskell, Dean. I mean, you go back. You had, you know, over the years. You know, Melendez Bird. All those guys. You know, they always had name. Todd Kelly. Even Coach Holmes played there. You know, so they always had, and they drew a lot of people would say like middle class families went to Bethel, and that's what Menchville was. And people didn't understand that even though the perception was about downtown, you had the neighborhoods that drew to Menchville were working middle class, and the same thing was for uptown. And what people didn't know, and I knew some of this stuff because my mom told me that Menchville had a higher minority population than whites, but it was perceived that it was the white high school because when they closed,
it was perceived like that. That's so true.
Like that. And then when they closed down Newport News High School, a lot of those teachers came from Newport News to Menchville, so it got to be, oh, this is the, you know, this is the place to be, da da da. And I mean, I heard, you know, later on they used to call it Happy Valley. Like once they used to call it Happy Valley, and it was the privileged school. And then you had Denby, and Denby was the forgotten school because everybody came from a certain section of Newport News that was all uptown. So it was just the forgotten area. But the thing they had all the military people that were coming in, and they had ballers, they had athletes. So if you were from Denby in that area, you knew that Denby had ballers there. It was just that because it was uptown and it, you know, that whole thing. And then you had Ferguson. Ferguson was kind of like Newport News version of Phoebus. You had the richest neighborhood in the city and the poorest neighborhood in the city in one high school.
Yeah.
And then it took a special person to coach there. Coach Bako, and then Coach Riemann was there. But they would bust you up. Either they put up numbers, they would bust you up. And then Ward was similar to Kickerton. They had athletes, but they were the blue collar school. You know, the white people there, black people, they're all blue collar workers. And it was the white high school in Ward County when it was there. And then they integrated it, and they, you know, when they closed Huntington and moved people. A lot of people were going there. And one of my mentors, who he told me the story, Mr. Outlaw, who was a longtime head of security at Menchville when I was there working, he used to talk to me. He told me that he wanted to go to Huntington. He knew he was going to Huntington. But when they integrated the schools, his folks was like, nah, man, you going to Ward. And he said it was one of those things when you got access or the perception is there, nah, you going to Ward. So he went to Ward, and he used to share some of those things with me. But it made, going to the games back then, you held a certain level of pride in the school you were going to, where you from. Menchville was 500 during that time when I was coming along or coming up. They would fight. They had skilled guys. They had athletes. We had size. We looked good coming off the bus, but we got in our own way as far as winning. For me, I was blessed because I was younger than the guys that were kind of like the I guys, tremendous athletes, but didn't know how to work together as a team and probably weren't serious about it. And then the guys that were my age or younger, we became tighter in a family because we saw some of the challenges and mistakes the older guys had. And we had bonded together. We had been in school together. And then we won at the JV level. So we knew if we beating you then, if we continue to work and lift weights, there's no excuse for us not to win, later on. And that's what it came down to.
You did a great job breaking it down. I really never heard anybody, as long as I've been living, break it down like that. But everything you said was spot on about each high school. I know we didn't get to every high school because we, Lafayette and Gloucester, but at the same time, you're right about Menchville because I grew up thinking until I, really started going to Menchville basketball and football games. I grew up thinking Menchville was like this affluent community and then, more whites. And then, I meet, all the guys that go there and I'm like, yo, Menchville is not that. I mean, it's a great school, it's a great community, but it wasn't that perception you said, that misconception was spot on. Because even that time, I know we talking your legacy in football, but I mean, y'all girls basketball team was like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember all their names. Danielle, there was
Danielle Dawson,
Danielle
Misty
Dawson.
Hart,
yeah, I mean, it was like,
but it was really the coach and it's Coach King and Coach Hart that was the coach that really, man, there was no nonsense. I mean, that's when I saw the girls running with bricks. Patty Dixon. I remember since it was Alan White, her daughter is doing big things at Heritage now in track. But watching them prepare, man, she had them in the gym running with bricks. There was no nonsense, stuff like that. Things happen, she moves on, but you still got the team there. And then again, my classmates come along that I've been in school with since elementary. They buy into that tradition that's there, and Forbes comes in and takes over the girls program, and boom, they take off. You get, you got Misty, you got Colleen, you get Danielle Dawson. She moves in from Petersburg. Then, and you add a couple more players in there, and now we're on our charter bus going to UVA. Bethel's on their bus going to UVA for the state championship game. And that's how it happened. That's why I honestly tell everybody we were spoiled. And that 93, 94 year is probably one of the greatest athletically for the PD in all of the sports: football, basketball, track, tennis, gymnastics, everything. I mean, around this area, we were dominant. I mean, just people that came out during those years, and you could argue with a lot of everybody wants to claim to their era and fight like that. But man, I was spoiled. I just being a part of it and being around it, and just, man, it was a great time. And I appreciate you posting those videos of Hunter and Aaron Sparrow, because I remember being at those games and no Menchville wasn't playing, but I'm there. You had to be in there. And I tell everybody that's when the change came for me, because it's a few guys in this area when I was coming up that let me know that it could happen if you were from here and you just wanted to be in that number. You wanted to be considered as one of the guys. And it was first, it was Eric Hunter, Aaron Sparrow. Then you had, for me, it was Marcus Michael at Denby, because I knew yes. I could put my hands on him. I could see him. Later it became like from Menchville, it was Deion Johnson. It was, Kwame Lassiter, because they were in my sister's class, but there was guys that you saw, you could put your hand, you could put your hands on, you could talk to them, you could go up to them and talk to them, and you were like, man, these guys are going. Like you cut on the TV and you watching East Carolina in a bowl game, Deion Johnson goes off, and he's like, man, I know that dude. Then you watching Tennessee, Todd Kelly, he's going off, and these people were legends.
Todd Kelly and James Wilson.
Yeah, and they legends. They were like, man, they got a dude. You would hear the story. Hey, you got a dude at Bethel. He 6 whatever. He 2 something. He run the hurdles. So you got to go to the track meet on Saturday just to see him run the hurdles. But they said, but wait a minute, he a DN. He does this, or people don't know. You see, AI and Tony Redlin triple jumping because Kaz got him out there doing track, and then they go in the basketball court, and do their thing. So people kept you busy, and you had to do things to create that mystique about you. You know what I'm saying? And that's what was crazy about it.
It was crazy, and you are bringing up the point. The reason why I do these legacy spotlights, and the reason why I post so much. A reason why I call it the golden era is not to minimize the era before us or after us. It's more so to say we were part of something now people realize was huge. You talking about, you mentioned Todd Kelly, one of the best athletes and linebackers in Bethel history, but he was at Tennessee with James Wilson from Hampton High, and on the offensive line, Rodney Riddick, who was an all-world offensive tackle from Hampton High. Rob, you also, you talked about that 93, 94 era. That was a special era as far as those years, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about Bethel winning the stakes in football and basketball, and there were other teams and other sports in that district, from our district, that were winning regionals and state titles or playing for them. Your year, you talk about Menchville always being close. You're right, because I remember my sophomore year, we played at Todd Stadium, and we played y'all, and it was a dog fight. It might have been like 9-6 or something. Y'all might have been up with 9-9, some field goals. And then Sean Hamlet was on the team that year. It was a senior year. I was a sophomore. In second half, we pulled away and won 27-9. Then you guys came back the following year, you home and home. The next year you're at Darling. We played y'all, and we just, Walter Ford, we went crazy. Yeah. We won like 50 something.
That's the game that changed it for me, because y'all beat us 77 to, it might have been 77-6, something like that.
It was something crazy. Yeah. And then your senior year, all of a sudden, it all came together. That's why I said I wanted to wait and touch on it, because we beat y'all. We got a chance to share the district with Kickintan. Like us, Kickintan, and y'all were at the top. I know you would look at that face. And y'all had, you always a dog, but you got, like me and you, we both got better every year.
Yeah.
And you and I were we were 2 of the top linemen in the state. It was, I remember a lot of college recruiters with that game. But more importantly, you're talking about Macklin was on that team.
Yeah.
And you're talking about also the big running backs y'all had.
Yeah, Malcolm Williams.
Yeah. He's the one that went to BC, right?
Went to BC.
Boston College.
Yep. And he ended up switching to linebacker. He's doing well. He's an anesthesiologist here in the area.
I got to get him on, man. Make sure we link up with him. Because he was a dog. But
and Boogie Johnson.
Boogie.
Yeah. And look, I just reconnected with Boogie recently at Home Depot. And I turned the corner. I said, Boogie? And he stopped. He was like, yeah. And I was like, dude, man, you around here? I said, man, where you been? And he was like, man, he said, where you been? And I said, man, I'm back here. And because, he was a dude that easily could have gone to school. And for whatever reason here or there, life choices, decisions, just exposure. Like I said, I was blessed. I had exposure to certain things. he didn't go to school. He went to work. He knew what he wanted to do. He's doing well. And that's all I really want to see guys, guys that are doing well. But man, yeah, that year, the only thing that was disappointing for us was we beat y'all. We struck fire that year because the guys on that team, like I said, some of us were the younger brothers and siblings, the guys that were a couple years ahead of us, 2 years before us.
Mm-hmm.
Then probably the mix of the greatest athletes were on the team the year before that year. You had Randy Overton, you had Keith Dixon,
yep.
Damon Gore, Roger Briggs. They were in that class before. Gabe Boyd, our linebacker. So you had those guys, but they were caught in between the older guys from '92 who arguably were the best athletes as a team, and then us. We were a team. We came from them because we figured out how to put it all together. But we had been in school and Little League together since elementary school, and we held each other accountable. I mean, we were doing stuff like we had our own training table before games. We would meet at Old Country Buffet and eat before the game as a team. We forced our parents to start having the Thursday night family meal before the game. It's like we made our coaches coach us because we were so dedicated and we held each other accountable. And that's where the change came. It wasn't like you couldn't get too far away. If you were messing up, the team would go handle it. We technically didn't have any captains by my senior year because all of us held each other accountable. We was like, man, we're not getting caught up in that. And so when we got to your game, I think Walter, we beat Bethel, and we got to the Hampton game. I think Walter was banged up a little bit.
Yeah, it was.
But we got him up out the game. And we knew once we got him up out of the game, we had a shot. Because I think y'all had changed quarterbacks that year. Y'all had
we had John Logan. We had new Logan. Yeah, Fred Brown had moved on, and we had John Logan, who was a great passer, but not a great runner.
Yeah, and like I said, we battled. And what people don't realize, and we talk about it, sometimes history, everybody like, man, who was on that team that year? And they always talk about David. Well, David played the play that saved the game for us. And that's when his legend took off, because he wasn't the starter at the beginning of the year. The person who actually was starting was Todd Wharton. Todd, I still, used to work with Todd for a while. Todd was the starter. He had some light things go on that pulled him away from the team. Somebody got hurt, put David in the game. David saved that game for us. And we
don't talk about it.
but
I know what play you talking about. The slant,
yeah.
We took all the way down to the 7. We got inside the 5. Macklin came out of nowhere and strips the receiver, Maurice. His name was Maurice. He was a young dude. And Maurice was gone. I said, I'm how linemen do. I'm like, I got my hands up. And Macklin came out of nowhere and strips him. That's the play you're referring to, right?
And so, that's the play. And then we almost still gave the game away because we had a young punter that ended up being a Division III All-American, Richard Haar, who was the punter for us. And he got the ball in the end zone, was scrambling and doing something. They were like, man, what are you doing? But the time ran out. We win the game. Here's the crazy part about it. At that time, my mom was in administration, and she had been in administration for a while, but she had switched titles and assignments in the school system. So she was in charge of the buses. Man, she had the buses pull up at the crib for after the game. And we had pizza, everything. Because to this day, that's the only time we beat Hampton in school history.
I know.
And I think they try. Menchville has in the trophy case. They try to count the year that I think Menchville. It's something they played. They played a JV schedule. It was the first year open, but see, people don't realize Coach Smith hated Menchville, and he always Supposedly that's what was told to us.
He never ever.
Yeah,
he
didn't
say that
that's
bad
why
about y'all.
that score 77 or whatever stuck with me, because what they told us, the story version I heard, a guy or whatever, how you will put it, was Menchville, Mike Smith's like first year coaching, when Menchville played the JV schedule, but they had all seniors and stuff. Man, drug Hampton through the mud, ran the score up on them, did whatever. And from that day forward, Coach Smith said that they would never beat him again. That's what they gassed me up.
I'll say this: Coach Smith, to this day, right now, as we speak on your Legacy Spotlight, memory is sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
He remember. He'll tell you about a matchup against DJ Dozier, first Colonial, 1988. Yeah. So it could be some validity to that, because I mean, he does not forget. I mean, I will say this: I don't know if you remember, because you and I both played both ways, and obviously, I matched up against you a few times throughout that game, but there was I ended up flipping with the other D tackle, Daryl Sims, and you guys are going in the red zone, and I beat the guard or D tackle right away, and I'm headed for your quarterback, and I'm getting ready to destroy him, and he ducks underneath me, rolls back left, and throws the touchdown pass, which proved to be, I believe, the difference. I can't remember the score, but I remember that was a big play, and I remember thinking, man, I messed up, because
that's Tracy Parker, man. That's Tracy.
Yes, that was Tracy Parker. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Tracy made a great play.
He does the friendship lottery. He just had a big Autism Crush Festival.
Yeah, Tracy.
He and his wife.
Tracy's my guy, man. He's a supporter of what I do. I mean, it's just crazy, because we're part of something. And even now, we're in our 40s. I remember that night. I remember how the grass smelled. I remember the lights. I remember your punter almost giving the game away. I seen y'all was on the sideline cussing him out. But at the same time, man, y'all made it happen, and congratulations to y'all that night. And then you turn around and y'all having a legendary battle with Kickertan.
Man, that was that. And let me tell you how the perception of control. The thought is that Mike Smith controlled everything. We beat y'all. We go into this game, the next game versus Kickertan. We supposed to play on Saturday. The game is Saturday. We geeked up 1,000 miles an hour. We Saturday. We know we on the tear. We gonna run through Kickertan. Lo and behold, all of a sudden, we can't play Kickertan Saturday night because it rained. And the field at Darling was treacherous. We always heard that because y'all had access to equipment at Hampton, at Hampton High, that Coach Smith would let the grass grow a little higher. Because y'all wore 7-stud cleats, so he knew what cleats he could have y'all wear or whatever, because y'all had sponsorships and all that stuff. And so you had that situation. So then they decide, okay, we can't play Saturday because it rained Friday night and the field's gonna be messed up, and we don't want to mess the field up. We're gonna move the game to Monday.
Remember, it was moved to Monday. But I don't remember all this stuff that you throwing in here about
Coach Smith. Hey.
Now him and Coach Newsom are tight.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Him and Coach Newsom are tight.
We just beat Hampton. They were like, man, they ain't letting us beat everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because they hated Menchville. So we go into that game battling. Morocco's all world. I mean, he arguably, he won Athlete of the Year that year, Delhi Press. He led 3 teams to district titles in the same year.
Yes, he sure did. That's pretty amazing.
He was another one of those guys in that 94 class. We were all taking recruiting business together, doing all of that stuff. And his folks were from that old school, Hampton University, Newport News, Hampton Public Schools, all interconnected. Because, back then, they were going to Doshikai. They were going to Bro Bumble. They didn't have all the spots, so everybody knew each other. And so, play that game, we battling. Tracy gets hurt. We go to our backup quarterback, Dink, who was great. He was good, but didn't have Marcus Lee, his real name, but he just didn't have the confidence at the time. And in that moment, it was a lot of pressure, you know what I'm saying? But we lose that game in double overtime. But then here's the thing that was messed up. We had to come back and play Denby Friday night.
Yeah.
So we played 2 games in 1 week. We ended up losing to Denby by 1 point.
Yeah.
And Denby was still loaded.
Denby had them running backs 1, 2, and 3.
Well, that was the '92 year. That's when they had the four horses.
That's right.
They
the
had
four
the four
horses.
horses.
Yeah.
They had Stacey Gresham.
Yes.
They had Aaron Barker. They were loaded. And they had Ronnie Barnes that played tight end.
Yeah, played basketball
Roger
too, Ronnie Barnes.
Yep. So, I mean, like, again, everybody was loaded. So, I mean, they're excuses now. And it's part of the lore and the history. But it was like, come on, man. How you going to make a high school team play 2 games in 1 week? You know?
No, I remember that. Then I thought that was a bit much, man. Also, you know, you guys, you know, who's to say what would happen if y'all played them that when you were supposed to play Kickintan? Because, you know, to their credit, man, they smoked us that year, man. Chip Laws, Morocco, Coach Smith's father or brother, I can't remember, I don't want to misquote, but somebody in his family passed away. So we played them that Friday, but he wasn't at practice much that week. And Morocco and Chip and those guys, man, the Roberts brothers, they destroyed us 33-16. And as you mentioned, Morocco Brown, shout out to Morocco, doing great things in the NFL.
Yeah.
He was, I feel like, because Morocco came from a great family, he's not celebrated as much, you know, because that year he led, as you mentioned, baseball, basketball, and football to 3 district titles. And, you know, that's pretty remarkable then and now. So, yeah, no, and you guys, I remember that night, man. I remember, you know, that night, I felt like y'all made all the right plays, whether it was Tracy ducking underneath me, the way your O-line played, the way y'all played on defense. Y'all were physical that night. And I remember that night. I remember thinking, man, you know, wow, Menchville finally beat us, man. And it's so crazy because you mentioned the year before we ran through y'all. But y'all were fired up that night. You know, Newport News teams always, I joke Banks about this too. Pre-game, nobody does it better. Y'all beating y'all pads. Y'all got a chance.
Oh, man. Hey, the best 2 was Warwick and Phoebus.
Phoebus too.
And let me tell you how long Warwick been doing. I remember as a kid going to Todd Stadium and you would be down by the locker room and Warwick was playing. Man, Ray Savage and them had a P-Funk going, man. And they had Parliament and Funk playing. I was like, man, who let the high school take the boombox into the locker room, man, at Todd Stadium? They would come off the bus like that.
Yeah, man. It was great times.
Yeah.
It was different.
Definitely different. And man, it was definitely a lot of battles. And you know where people came on and got big. And you talking about that time, every team that year had linemen. Because you remember Phoebus had Bostic.
Charles Bostic.
Is it Mike and Dean that played at Bethel?
So that year was Jonathan Dean was their best lineman on both sides.
Yeah, but then they had the light-skinned guy. He ended up having a security company in Hampton. He played at Bethel too. And I forgot what he was looking at going to school. He was like 6 and some change to play with Dean.
Man, I normally can name drop like that, man.
I'm gonna tell you, man, that me and towards my junior year, me staying at Menchville almost didn't happen because like I said, my mom worked in the administration building, and who was over there to work with my mom was Inco, Mr. Incominius.
Recruiting.
And people, you know, my mom had this mystique about her that she wasn't approachable or whatever like that, because you got to understand, she taught at Carver her first 2 years out of college, and then she got picked to take over work with my uncle Walter Kane with government programs. So, and this was before schools are integrated. So then schools integrated. You know, she had a prominent position because she basically helped bring First Step or like the preschool program to Newport News. And so a lot of people went through that program or whatever. So she had this mystique or whatever. And Mr. Incomedius, they worked together, but he old school. He didn't care. He was telling my mom, he said, man, you're going to want to move, Robert, away from Menchville. And, we got this thing going on over here at Bethel. And that's when they had Chris Gaskell, Dean,
They had Chris Gaskell, Dean. They had Lineman and Kevin. They had Vincent Page.
Yeah, Vincent Page.
They were huge. Mike Simmons, who was 6'7", tight end. They were huge.
Yep,
Yeah.
and they had everything, all the positions. And Vincent Page and I, we grew up in the same daycare in North Newport News at Mayberg. As I think it was Ward Kids Academy is the name they go by now. But that's how I know Vincent. Me and I got pictures of me and Vincent from birth to like 4 or 5 years old. So that's why we tight.
You know, I hated losing to y'all, but I respected that night because y'all made the plays y'all won. But losing to Bethel will always burn. I'm grown. That's our rival. And on top of it, Vincent and all those guys, we looked at those Bethel guys as pretty boys, man. You know what I'm saying? We looked at them like, yo, man, like, y'all not supposed to beat us, man. You know, but at the same time, man, the excuses now, I like that saying what you said, because our junior year, they smashed us, man. And the misconception, I'll say this right now on your legacy spotlight, then I want to talk about your college years real quick. The misconception that it was all Chuck, that was all Iverson. And that's so far from true, because they were a very good team.
They were.
Did he elevate them? Yes, but you don't win a state championship and beat Norcom, Hampton that year, our junior year. We were number 1 in the state, and we were ranked in the nation by USA Today, and they beat us 30-10. And you don't beat Norcom that year, and then you go on and beat the team Huguenot down 22-0 or 16-0. They came back. Yeah, they won those games, and it wasn't just because of Chuck. They had guys that made plays. You know, Jonathan Dean, another guy like yourself, who I want to give him a shout out, and I'll get him on too. A phenomenal two-way lineman. I mean, really, really physical, strong, arms down to his ankles, the longest arms in Peninsula District history.
Do you remember the shirt they came out with after they won the basketball championship that had all of their nicknames? They had one of those cartoon shirts.
I saw it, but I don't remember like that. Yeah, you got a great memory, Rob. I'm telling you, I gotta get.
I try to hold on to this stuff, man, because I'm getting older now, and what I realize is if you don't tell your story, other people gonna tell it for you.
No doubt.
And it's not always what is known; it's what's perceived, and that's what ends up happening. And you know, some of this stuff, man, I've held on to. You know, I tell people I keep receipts because I know when we were together, how we met, how we connect. And man, like you said, man, it's a rich history of everybody interwoven. And like I tell people all the time, if you pulled up a picture and we were all in that picture, you would know certain guys on there. You'd be like, oh man, that's such and such, he whatever. I may be in that picture, but I won't be in the background. They'd be like, man, I think I know that guy, but they don't necessarily know how they know him or why they know him or whatever. And that's where you fall into. And I don't mind that being that guy in that situation. But I hold on to these stories because I was like, man, I was there. And I say, and Bethel had a good team. They were
very good team. And just to transition to your college years, because you and I and Dean and other guys, 94, the 93 to 94 season, as you mentioned, was the year of the linemen. It was a lot of great offensive line, not just on the peninsula, but on the south side as well, and throughout the state. Richmond, even on the Eastern Shore, our guy Todd Washington. Todd. I mean, that was, a lot of linemen. I was being recruited heavily like you were. And at that time, contrary to popular belief, Tech was not what it is now. It was up and coming, and they were recruiting well. I was a UVA guy. And people don't, and I was being in UVA, Welsh was the head coach, and they were recruiting me. And I remember they were telling me, we're looking at Rob, we're looking at Bostic. And I was like, oh yeah, Rob's my guy. So that, Aaron Brooks, I knew they were looking at Aaron, AB. And I was like, okay. And then they were recruiting Bostic. Now, when I played against Bostic, my junior and senior, especially my senior, I gave Phoebus the business. I gave them work. One of my best games to this day, both sides. I mean, matter of fact, I might post it. I think I posted a clip before, but all jokes aside, they started to go all in on you, which made sense. But they also started to go all in on Bostic. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead, take my talents to Tech and look at Florida and other schools recruiting me. But with that being said, you go on to UVA. I don't really know what happened to Bostic. I know he went as well. I don't think things panned out for him as well, but that's fine. Still a good player. You go on and you have another good career, another very good career. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, and we'll talk about this as well. You got me again our senior year.
Yeah.
With the
well,
comeback.
Junior and
Your junior
year.
Yeah, junior and senior. The junior year,
was
we
at
were ranked.
home.
Y'all weren't. Yeah, y'all were at home. It was a night game. AB, Aaron Brooks was in his bag. That wasn't even, you guys worked us. That won't know whatever. My senior year, we are 29-7.
Yeah.
And I'm chirping. I'm telling everybody, I'm going against Kearney and Dingle, and I'm telling everybody, oh, y'all gonna get this work today. And then y'all came back. But that was part of the great times. And I say this with pride. The fact that Virginia, which is still a great state for athletes and great people, we stayed in state. And that's what made the UVA Tech during that era really special, because there was so many guys on both sides from within the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
But individually, Rob, just talk about your time. Not so much our matchups, because me and you gonna joke and talk about that forever. But your time there, because I feel like, again, we know how great Elton Brown was, our little big brother that came after us.
Yeah.
But you were a hell of a player too.
Man, I was fortunate. Like, again, I told you before, it's just wanting to be in the number. To be one of the guys that was there and not disappointing where you come from, who's been there before you, what's going to happen. And it's crazy. People would, if you ask other people, they'll tell you, oh, he knew he was going to UVA. He was going to UVA the whole time, this and that, because I'll share with you a little bit about that. My family legacy with UVA that has nothing to do with football, but during that recruiting process, I would always end up either following you on a visit, going on a visit with Todd, stuff like that. And it was always the same schools, but I thought I was going to Pitt, because I was going to double. I was going to play football, do track. And so
really?
Because my senior year, I won the indoor state in shot put, and then I came back and won the outdoor shot put and discus. So, and what people don't know, Steve Lewis was the head track coach at Pitt, and Coach Lewis came back and coached at Hampton, but he's actually from the area. He was Menchville High School's first track coach. And another thing about it was, he was my dad's roommate at Norfolk State when he was there. My dad was at Norfolk State for like 2 years. So they're in where they lived in their house was Steve Lewis, Melvin Jones, my dad, all at Norfolk State. And Coach Jones was a longtime coach at Lafayette, coached football, track, and was at Hampton HU for a while. But so I thought I was going to be able to go there and do both. Tech started recruiting me because of Kavanaugh that had been at Carolina. And then it was was it Billy Height?
It's Billy Height.
Yeah.
That year he recruited you because they needed him to help out in the Tidewater area. He normally recruited the Maryland, DeMatha area. Yeah.
So basically what happened, my sister goes to UVA. She's in the class with Kirby and Slade. So she goes up there her first year. I come up, do football camp. Show up, kind of unknown. I was in 8th, 9th grade. Coach Wilmer comes by the room. I don't know if you knew Travis Grandison that played at JMU, but he's like
I didn't know.
We were roommates at camp. AB was there that year. Antonio came because he was getting closer to senior year. He was looking at going to UVA before he had a situation with his knee. And so I go and do camp. Coach Wilmer comes by and he says, son, I'm just meeting you now. If you do what you need to do by your senior year, you can come to school here. I know you can play. You can come to school here. And I was like, okay, 9th grade, thing about it. We fast forward. I'm getting looks, recruits, or whatever. So it's Tech. It comes down to Tech and UVA. Frank Beamer comes to my house, and Welsh comes to my house the same day. One of the big boosters for Tech is my next door neighbor now, and they would put the Tech flag out. I mean, they were so Virginia Tech. They told both of their kids that you can go to any school in the country as long as it's Tech, and they had the grades, whatever. They were only paying for their kids to go to Virginia Tech. my neighbor across the street played at Tech, and then like the buzz got out that Beamer's coming to the house. Man, people put out flags. My guy that's the head of the guys department, she went to high school with Frank Beamer. They had like Frank Beamer Day at Menchville and all this stuff. But here comes Welch. Well, I was, and again, the perception was I was Coach Bowman, Jim Bowman, and Danny Wilmer's guy. I wasn't an O'Brien guy. O'Brien was like the OC and had been the O-line coach. He wanted you. Yeah, he wanted you. You were his guy. Mm-hmm. And which made sense because he had struck gold with Houston, Aaron Mundy,
Ryan Gerzak.
Yeah, Gerzak. So he had struck gold with them, and you were his guy. And it was between me and you going there. And then you sprinkled Todd in there, and I was like, man, all three of us ain't going to the same school. It was kind of like the same thing that happened with Vic, Ron C, and Brooks. That whole you hear people talk about that whole thing, like that. And so O'Brien wasn't to come to my house or whatever. We had that visit. I had been to Tech earlier that year, did the tour because I went there for a track meet. So a lot of my visits I did around track. I visited Tennessee when I was out there for the Junior Olympics. Phil Foreman came and got me from the track meet. I did my visit there. I looked at Maryland and a couple other places. But UVA started to make sense for me because I started going to more games. My dad grew up playing and working because they had the Shipyard League with Mr. Slade, Chris Slade's dad. So we would go to the games and we would sit with them. He knew Kirby's family, all of them, because like you said, they were from the certain section of York County and Newport News that kind of interwoven together, with all that. So my dad knew all of them. We were going to the games and in that atmosphere. And I actually was going to I went to the Virginia Tech game, but I was going there because I had Alonzo Bell's brother Steve played at Tech during that time period. And then again, Marcus Michael, people forget about, kick returner, played at Tech.
No, he was a dog. He got records.
Yeah. And like I said, these were guys I could put hands on. So, I'm thinking about, okay, what I'm going to do. Again, my cousin's in the back of my mind. He had been at Princeton, had played O-line. I was like, all right, boom. I'm going to go to UVA because I looked at it, and when people say this is crazy, I saw where every black O-lineman that played at UVA got a shot at the league. If you go back and look, especially like from Ray Roberts, if you played or you had time or whatever, and you were a black O-lineman, and I had already made the point of I was playing O-line. It wasn't that I didn't like defense, but I thought at my size, at that point, that size D lineman was a dime a dozen. Like it was everybody. Everybody had them. You would spit in a box, and I was like, I'm playing O-line from day one. I mean, I knew that. Just like I knew when I was little, I was a lineman. I'm putting my hand in there. When you got Paul and David Macklin as your childhood friends, you ain't running around catching nobody, running away from nobody. They might have helped me get my feet better, but yeah, man. So I kind of made my mind up. Was a late qualifier, with the SAT, and so when it came down to it, they called me. UVA called me and said, "Look, what you gonna do? You passed the SAT, we got you, whatever." And then I said, "All right," I made my mind up, and then got the score, told my folks, and it really made sense because what people don't know. My uncle actually was one of the first 5 blacks to graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences at UVA. So my uncle, he finished UVA in 65. So you could do the math. That's when UVA was all male. It was before, you had integration, anything. So he went there. Then you fast forward, my sister goes there in 89. She's there from 89 to 93. Then I have a choice. Again, I'll take you back, old school black people. Look, if you can get in here, this is where you're going. UVA started winning. They were winning, started getting national notoriety. They started winning. they were the bigger program. My other cousin Farrell, Edmonds, he was in the back of my head. He told me, don't go to another state and make that other state popular. He said, I kind of made that mistake. It worked out for me, but he said when I was coming out of school, he was like, UVA was sorry, Tech was sorry. And they were recruiting me, I won't go in there. Maryland was the hot ticket. He said, man, I'm going to Maryland. And that's where I went. And he might not say it everywhere, but he'll mention that he probably would be in the Hall of Fame in Virginia Sports Athletic Hall of Fame if he hadn't not gone to a school out of the state. I mean, they've made some changes now, but for him in his era, he probably would have gotten in at some point if he had stayed in state. And so I held those things and held them in the back of my mind, and it just made sense. It was the right fit. UVA was blowing up, and I knew academically the reputation in itself is what I wanted. And guys around here were blowing up. Ray Savage started blowing up. People were going there blowing other sports, and the programs had started taking off. And I was like, all right, I'm all in, I'm going. And then London, Paul London, hell of a recruiter. Man, London would get you on campus, and all the things you think you would get entrapped in when you get into college and you be around, he just knew if that won't you, he was like, man, if that ain't you, that don't gotta be you if you come here. This is what we doing here. And what and he would just break it down to you just like that. Hey man, I mean, what you waiting for? And then you started connecting the dots. You had people from the South Side whose aunts and uncles work with your folks over here. And it was like all this interwoven thing, and then you knew people that did track from here. And then you had guys from the western part of the state, you seen that track meet. And it was like, hey man, we're gonna do this thing. And then that's how I met Brooks. And me and Brooks became tight. Only roommate I had in college, only person I ever lived with. We became tight off the fact that Antoine Smith and I and Breon Rose, two of his childhood friends and high school teammates, we all went to elementary school together. And then, I remember walking up to Aaron at the Fort Users tournament, and it was, because that right there is the whole. That's a play. Oh my God, man! Hey, man,
that was the Mecca. That was the Mecca.
And I ain't even play basketball, but except for summer league, and I missed the Fort Users Christmas tournament. But yeah, I remember walking up to him and say, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about going to UVA. This and this." I introduced myself or whatever, and we chopped it up. Then we talked again at the Daily Press All Sports Banquet, and then that next day he announced he was going to UVA, and at that time, we were going up. They had the spring game around Spring Fling. That's when we connected with Trey Oliver from Tab. And Tab was, good at that time. We linked up with Trey, and we were all up there that weekend. And that's when we started forming that bond and that friendship. And then we just fell in with a group of guys, because when we got to UVA, it was a probation year. We only had 14 dudes in our class, and it's only out of the 14, I think 7 of us finished, graduated, graduated, went on there. And from that tight 7, I think 5 of us all went to the league. So, but I mean, we were tight, and we got up there with an already tight group. Like I said, when Paul was there, Paul had a group of guys he's tight with to this day, and they just reeled us in. And we came in there different, man. We had a different attitude, and everybody played their position. It wasn't about I'm competing with you for playing time. It's like I don't want to be the guy to let these guys down, and hold each other accountable. And like when I heard you do the Legacy Spotlight with the lineman that you played with at Tech and everything, y'all talked about the whole time you were there and that bond y'all had. We had the same thing here.
Yeah, we
had the same thing here, and I respected that, and that's why in the summertime when everybody was home and we had that cookout, when Banks brought y'all over here, y'all were on the word of Banks. Banks was like, like you said, he my big brother too, man. He, helped hold me accountable, and we played together in high school, little league, high school, in pros. We coached together. We won a championship together coaching in Amsterdam. So that's how he even wove. And then he introduced me to Haygood. And man, Man, me and Haygood, boy, let me tell you, man, that dude, he's special, man. Hey, but I love the dude to death, man.
I love
And,
Haygood. Haygood and TJ were on here, as you mentioned, man, and we had that bond. It
yeah,
was my big bros, man. And I remember Banks that summer, like I said, Banks came over and he was like, man, we're going to Rob Hunt's cookout. I said, Rob? I didn't know you and Banks were tight, man. And I was like, yeah, Rob's my guy. Because, I would see you at different things, different parties or track meets, and always we showed each other love. But we didn't grow up together, but I always respected you from a distance, as a player and as a person.
Yeah.
And then I remember I came to the cookout, and it was packed because, it was was Alicia Tucker there, but I know it felt like it felt like everybody was there.
Man, let me tell you, Alicia Tucker is like my sister, man. Her and my sister tight. She part of our family now, man. Yeah. UVA, her, my mom, my sister, same sorority, have helped me out with my career, with stuff she's got going on, and we support each other, and hold each other accountable. With the stuff that we doing, and that's what's special about this area. About this area, man. That a lot of times you go to lean on it, and you pull in a favor. Somebody knows somebody from here could put you in touch with the right person. I think it's some times that I probably had made some decisions that might have messed that up and rubbed some people the wrong way. But you grow older and you mature and learn from it. I mean, you go on from there. But yeah, man, the cookout thing, man, just happened. Was coming home. My mom used to do it when she was in college, and my dad, his family is so big. Every 4th of July, Newport News Park, that that's what we did. So we were coming home, and it was the midpoint of the summer. You know what I'm saying? So it was the midpoint of the summer. We had been training, and we knew when we got back, it was really time to get to work. Yeah. And we live close to the beach. I used to tell everybody, hey, man, 4th of July, let's go down to the beach or whatever. And it was like, I said, I'll have a cookout at my house. So I went to my folks and was like, man, we're going to have a cookout. And what was good about that was when your folks didn't have to pay for you to go to school, all that supposed college fund money, it had to go somewhere. You didn't know that they paid it until they make it. Yeah. They was gonna make it happen for you. So, man, we used to come back here and we used to joke about it, say we training to go to the beach for the 4th of July. And that first, and when it got different was that first year I had it was when Junior Burroughs, Corey Alexander, all of them had just got drafted in the NBA.
And they were there. They were there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So the NBA money was different. So
yeah, it's still different. It's real different.
Yeah. Well, so go ahead. They pulling up with Range Rovers.
I saw them. I remember. Yep.
Yeah. So and that's what everybody was aspiring to get to. It was like, man, okay, now we're trying to get to the show because this is what this is going to be about. And we were going after that, and we did that one. And then the next year we had some of the guys we played with got drafted in the league. Because I think Haygood came back during his rookie year at the Jets. He came another time, and then and on the low, it became another recruiting tool too, because then by that time, David Macklin had gone to Penn State. He brought down Concho, some of the Penn State guys. Then you had Womack was getting ready to come to UVA, and my mom talks about it to this day. She said, "I can't believe Womack just showed up here by himself to the cookout," because he had some people from Phoebus that had come up. That there were students, just regular students that had come to the cookout before, so he knew them too. He came up and then brought him in. Then you had Donnie Green, all the guys. It just became a thing to do, and we did it. And people still tell me, man, I need to have another one, but I want to and plan on doing it, but it's getting everybody to a point where they, where they are in their lives, because people got families.
No, it's hard. It's just like trying to schedule these legacy spotlights, man. It's funny. That's when we had a thing that's so tough to get now called free time. Yeah, free time. Even though we were student athletes and we were in college, it was nothing to say, let's just get together, man. Rob, we come to the point of the show, man, where we're concluding, man, because your legacy is remarkable. I mean, you got drafted after you left UVA.
Yeah.
in 99 by the Bucks. You played, you mentioned NFL Europe, you met other guys and you played, you won championships over there, you coached. I usually end the show with guys giving a point of reflection, words of wisdom, or just some feedback to those watching this Legacy Spotlight. You know, you to me are an extension of your father and your mother. And I think, you know, we could probably do this show for 3 hours because, you know, you have like great insight. You got great insight, but also you were a great player and also you're a great man. And I love the fact that you're humble. I mean, because even that we talk and, you know, we on Facebook chopping it up, or, you know, there's a thread about some great, you don't really make it about you, except when you and your sister were trying to tell me that I wore I didn't wear number 66 to that. You see,
75.
Again,
It was 75.
It was 75. So that year I wore 75, 70. I wore 75 and 77 because certain jerseys didn't have the 77. That's why I was like,
that sounds like that Mike Smith law.
Nah,
right
Mike Smith never was like, oh yeah, you're gonna show up, Rob. Huh? You and your sister was all like, man, what are they talking about?
Man, but I mean, it just happened that it seemed like that. And like you said, with that being behind, because we watching the film, right? We watch the tape. You know, basically we watch tape, and every week it seemed like, and I guess all the linemen in the district either wore 77 or 75. If you would consider that guy. So it just looked like every week, whoever that dude for the other team was, you had that jersey on. And then you got to remember, my mentors in high school were Red Harmon, who was my football coach, and then Teddy Bako, who was my track and shot put coach.
You know I love Coach Bako.
So they knew what buttons to push. They knew what to get you hyped. And you know, I think you played with Day Day, right? Coach Harmon's son, he played guard at Hampton. When Coach was coaching up. Yeah. So he came to me and he said,
"No, Day wasn't there. It was I was Tyrone Tynes, Lloyd Tucker, and Lamar Newsom.
Yeah, I know at one point he was on the team, and Coach Harmon would come to us, and shout out to Coach Harmon because he one of the few coaches that every school he'd been at, the team had beat Hampton. And it just so happened that way. So Coach Harmon, he come to me and he said, man, you see what they doing, right? He was like, man, baby boy, you see what they doing? He said, man, they got him in your jersey, man. He ain't wore that jersey all year. And I'm gassed up. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I'm afraid to minute now. And I was like, yeah, you know, because I want a trash talking dude. You know what I'm saying? I ain't get caught up in that. You know, but he would be in my ear. He was like, man, look at that, man. He got your jersey on, man. He ain't never wore that number all year. Look at that. And every tape we watch, he got on this. And we see this is what happened. You remember, depending on how your schedule fell, you either had a whole bunch of home games or you were going to Todd Stadium for the other games. And I think when y'all came to us, it was one of the few times that y'all played away because of just how the schedules fell. You end up being home because we only had two stadiums. We only had two stadiums. So it just fell in place, and I stuck with it, lived with it. You know, my sister, man, she my biggest fan. She gonna ride with me regardless.
Your sister was like quoting songs. I remember that night and some poem. I'm like, look, all due respect, we respected Menchville, and I respected you. I knew that was a big matchup, but I wore 75. So it's funny now I'll find the pictures. I wore 75 and 66 sometimes. 77 because, you know, there were certain jerseys. Hampton has, even then and now, 100,000 uniforms. So certain ones didn't fit right. So it was never like, Coach was like, you're going to wear 75. It was never, you know, it's just like when I chose Tech, there was this big misconception that Coach Smith wanted everybody to go to UVA, and he really never got involved in my recruitment. I mean, I was looking at Florida. I mean, I really love Florida. My dad wanted me to go to Florida. And Tech kind of made their way into my top 5 by the way of other college coaches getting removed or fired. So he never was like, you're going to be a Wahoo. But I'm so glad we clearing the air now. When your sister watches this recorded, because I was like, man, I was like, nah, I never want to show up, Rob. Like I knew when I was going against you, it was like going against myself. You were quiet. Actually, I thought, when I played you, especially my senior year, I thought like you were like weren't personable because you were just very stoic and you played. Um, I saw you talking to your teammates, but you never said nothing to me or Hampton derogatory. It was always within the lines, like you did your thing. And I remember having a lot of respect for you even
Yeah.
more after that game. And of course, we followed each other's career at UVA, man. It's crazy how
Mm-hmm.
God had us intertwined, but running parallel at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time. Yeah, our
definitely,
careers
definitely.
and how we ended up. But with all that being said, I want you to share your final thoughts, man, because I'm glad we were able to record this. I'm glad that people will see this, when I
Yeah.
air this, your legacy spotlight, because you were one of the greats at Menchville. You were one of the greats at UVA, and you went on and you played professionally, and now you're back home. To the young Robert Hunts and Dwight Vicks, to the young men who are going down the same path, not just the path of athleticism and playing sports, but just growing up in the 757 or growing up in the 703 or wherever they at, watching this, man. What do you want to tell them when it comes to their path to success? How to overcome adversity, how to get to and beyond where you and I have gone to.
Yeah.
What words of wisdom do you want to say as we wrap up your legacy spotlight to them? Men and women, young men and women.
Yeah. The biggest thing is take advantage of your resources, the access that you have, the knowledge that you can gain. Definitely allow yourself to be coached, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, for me, some people know some of the struggles that I had that we didn't touch on here, and there's always another time and place for that. But those are the things that shape you, mold you, learn from what people did around you, and again, continue to work. You have to show up. You have to be present. If you're not there, then somebody else is definitely going to get that spot. And when you get an opportunity to tell your story, tell it. Because if you're not present, somebody else is going to tell it for you. And again, man, it comes down to the work you put in, and you set the goals and worked on it. It may change a little bit here and there, but if you continue to work, again, ask for help, reach out to resources you have, and that's what makes the difference. Because I mean, in my years, I've come to learn and understand that you may ask for something because you think a person can help you one way, but they might be able to lead you in the right direction to help you obtain your goal and get there. And again, for us, we need to continue to support each other. When we get in situations like yourself, you have, your podcast here and the things that you're doing. It's my obligation not to let you fail. It's to do what I can to help you, because your access may open a window for me down the road to help somebody else. And that's big. And because we're in different places geographically, we still have to rely on that network and those resources that we've gained over the years from the work our parents have put in and done, man. So I definitely appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Number one, I appreciate you, man. And shout out to everybody, the Hunt, Edmonds family, everybody, man, supporting Rob. And shout out to your big sister. She definitely rides for
Yeah,
you, man. What's her name? I'm sorry, I want you
a
to say big
million,
sister.
a
Amelia.
million.
God
Yeah,
bless
a
you, Amelia.
million.
You definitely ride for your brother, man. And
Yeah, she's
you
in
know,
DC doing big things.
okay, I'm in Northern Virginia, man. We probably 6 degrees of separation. I probably bumped into it
Yeah.
without even knowing it, man. But
Mm-hmm.
shout out to your sister Amelia, man, and shout out to your late father and your mom, everybody, man. And shout out to everybody, man, doing great things in the Hunt family, man. And Rob, I appreciate you jumping on, man.
Man,
As
thanks,
two
man.
men that were part of a great legacy, it's an honor to have you on. And I'm glad you continue to do great things, man. And you know, I'm just grateful for our relationship. And I'm also
Yeah,
grateful
yeah.
for the people that support Vicktory Life and the people that continue to support Vicktory Life. If you haven't before, if this is your first time, subscribe to our YouTube channel for great features like this one featuring the great UVA and Menchville High School great Robert offensive lineman. And again, like I say every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy, man. Salute to everybody supporting
All right, man.
Robert and Vicktory Life, man. And you be blessed, man. Thank you, Rob.
All right, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.